The swing set in our backyard was my favorite place in the world. Mom and I painted it bright yellow 2 summers ago. She said it was the color of sunshine, and we needed more sunshine in our lives. Dad had groaned a little, saying it was too bright, but he smiled when he said it. Now, the yellow seemed faded, like a flower that needed water. I sat on the grass beneath it, not really wanting to swing. Swinging was something I did with Mom. She would push me so high I felt like I could touch the clouds, and she'd sing her special song. It wasn't a song from the radio. It was her own made-up tune with silly words about a little bird learning to fly. The melody was simple, like a lullaby, and it always made me feel safe, like I was wrapped in the warmest blanket. She sang it when she tucked me in at night, when she put a bandage on my scraped knee, or when we were just sitting on the porch watching the rain. I hadn't heard that song in a long time, not since the house got so quiet. The quiet was the worst part. It was a heavy kind of quiet that filled up all the rooms, even the spaces where Mom's laughter used to be. Dad tried to fill it sometimes. He'd turn on the TV loud or ask me a lot of questions about school, but his voice sounded hollow, like he was talking from the end of a long tunnel. He was sad, too. I could see it in his eyes, even when he was trying to smile. They didn't sparkle anymore. I hugged my knees to my chest, trying to be as small as possible. A fat, clumsy bee buzzed around a dandelion near my shoe. I watched it for a second, then went back to tracing patterns in the dirt with my finger. A tear slipped down my cheek and plopped right onto a little circle I had drawn. Then another one followed, and another. Soon I couldn't see the patterns anymore because my eyes were all blurry. I buried my face in my knees, not wanting the world to see me crying. It felt like if I started, I would never be able to stop. The lump in my throat was so big I could barely breathe. I missed her. I missed her so much it hurt, like a giant hand was squeezing my heart. The backyard was separated from our neighbor's house by a tall wooden fence. We didn't know them very well. An old man lived there, Mr. Harrison. Dad said he was a bit of a grump and liked to be left alone. I'd only ever seen him from my window, a shape of a man with white hair, pottering around his garden. His house was as quiet as ours had become. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to remember the exact sound of her voice singing the bird song. I hummed it softly to myself, but it didn't sound right. My voice was wobbly and small, not like hers, which was warm and full of light. The more I tried to hold on to the memory, the more it felt like it was slipping away, like sand through my fingers. The thought made me cry even harder, my shoulders shaking with quiet little sobs. And then, I heard it. It was faint at first, like a whisper on the wind, a gentle melody, weaving through the leaves of the big oak tree that stood between our yards. I lifted my head, wiping my wet cheeks with the back of my hand. I held my breath, listening. It couldn't be. It was just my imagination, my mind playing tricks on me because I missed her so much. But it grew louder. It was a guitar. Someone was playing a guitar, and the notes were slow and careful and so familiar. It was her song. My mom's song. It was coming from the other side of the fence, from the grumpy old man's house. For a long moment, I just sat there, frozen on the grass. My tears had stopped, replaced by a feeling so big I didn't have a name for it. It was a mix of shock and a little bit of fear, but underneath it all, there was a tiny, flickering spark of hope. The song was a secret, a special thing just for me and Mom. How could a stranger know it? Especially a grumpy stranger like Mr. Harrison. My heart was beating fast, like a hummingbird's wings. I got to my feet slowly, my legs feeling a little wobbly. I crept towards the wooden fence, one quiet step at a time, like I was a spy in a movie. The grass was cool and damp under my bare feet. The guitar music was clearer now. Every note was perfect. It wasn't exactly like Mom's singing, of course. It was slower, more thoughtful, and each note seemed to carry a little bit of sadness with it. But it was her melody. There was no doubt. The fence was tall, way taller than me. The wooden planks were old and gray, with splinters sticking out here and there. I pressed my ear against the wood, closing my eyes. The music vibrated through the fence, tickling my skin. It felt like the song was wrapping around me. A gentle hug that I hadn't realized how much I needed. I wanted to stay there forever, just listening. But my curiosity was a powerful thing. A little voice in my head that kept asking, how? I started walking along the fence, my fingers tracing the rough grain of the wood. I was looking for a secret passage. Dad and I had found one a long time ago. A loose board at the very back of the yard, behind the big lilac bush that only ever got 1 or 2 flowers. I pushed aside the leafy branches, my heart thumping a little harder. And there it was. The board was just as we had left it, slightly pushed to one side. It was just big enough for me to squeeze through, I hesitated for only a second. Dad had told me never to go into Mr. Harrison's yard. He likes his privacy, Mia, he'd said. But Dad didn't know about the song. This was different. This was important. Taking a deep breath, I wiggled through the gap. Mr. Harrison's yard was different from ours. It was neater. Rows of flowers I didn't know the names of stood in perfect lines, all bright reds, purples, and yellows. There was a stone path leading to a small patio behind his house, and that's where he was. Mr. Harrison was sitting on a metal chair, his back to me. He looked smaller than he did from my window. His white hair was thin, and he was hunched over a dark wooden guitar that rested on his knee. He wasn't grumpy at all. He just looked lonely. His fingers moved carefully over the strings, and as he played, his head was bowed, as if he was listening to the music with his whole body. The song was so beautiful, it made my chest ache. I stood behind a rose bush, hidden. I didn't want the music to stop. I wanted to listen to him play forever. He finished the melody, letting the last note hang in the air for a long moment before it faded into silence. The quiet that followed was different from the quiet in my house. It was peaceful. He didn't start playing again. He just sat there, staring at his hands. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to ask him how he knew my mom's song. I took a small step forward, and my foot landed on a dry twig. Snap. The sound was as loud as a firecracker in the quiet yard. Mr. Harrison's head shot up. He turned around in his chair, and his eyes, which were a pale, watery blue, found me immediately. He looked surprised, and then a frown crossed his face. His voice was gravelly, like stones rubbing together. "What are you doing here? This is private property." I was pinned to the spot by his sharp words. My first instinct was to turn and run, to scramble back through the fence and hide in my room. But my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. All the sadness from before came rushing back, and a fresh wave of tears blurred my vision. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I just wanted to be close to the music. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice trembling. I heard the song. Mr. Harrison's frown didn't disappear. If anything, it deepened. The song? What are you talking about, girl? He started to stand up, and he seemed much taller now, a big, imposing shadow against the afternoon sun. It was my mom's song, I blurted out, the words tumbling out of me in a rush. She used to sing it to me, all the time, but she can't anymore. Saying it out loud made it feel real in a way it hadn't before. I pressed my lips together, trying to hold back a sob, but it was no use. A small whimper escaped. The man stopped moving. He just stood there, halfway out of his chair, looking at me. His face changed. The anger in his eyes seemed to fizzle out, replaced by a look of utter confusion. He slowly sank back down into his seat, the metal groaning softly under his weight. He stared at me, not like I was a pest in his garden, but like he was seeing me for the very first time. "Your mom?" he asked, his gravelly voice much softer now. "Who is your mom?" "Her name was Sarah," I said, wiping my nose with my sleeve. "We live next door." He was quiet for a long time. He looked past me, towards the fence, a distant, thoughtful expression on his face. He seemed to be looking at a memory, not at his flower beds. When he finally looked back at me, the watery blue of his eyes seemed brighter. "Ah," he said, and it was just a puff of air, but it was filled with understanding. "Sarah, the one with the bright laugh." I nodded, my heart giving a little leap. He remembered her laugh. "I didn't mean to frighten you, child," he said, and his voice was gentle now. He gestured with his hand towards a small stone bench a few feet away from him. "Come, sit for a minute." I hesitated. I was still a little scared of him, but the kindness in his eyes made me take a shuffling step forward, and then another. I sat on the very edge of the cold stone bench, my hands twisted in my lap. He carefully leaned the guitar against his empty chair. "I play that song to remember," he said, looking at his own hands. They were wrinkled and covered in faint brown spots, but his fingers were long and elegant. It was my wife's favorite. Her name was Eleanor. I looked at him, confused. "But it's my mom's song." A small, sad smile touched the corners of his lips. "It was Eleanor's first," he explained patiently. "She and your mother, they were friends. Your mom used to come over for tea, right here in this garden. Eleanor would hum that little tune while she was working on her knitting. Said it made the needles fly faster. Your mom loved it. She asked Eleanor to teach it to her one afternoon." He chuckled, a dry, rusty sound. "Eleanor was so pleased. She'd made it up herself when she was a girl, just like your mother did for you, I imagine." I stared at him, my mind trying to piece it all together. My mom, here in this garden, with a woman I'd never met, learning the song that she would one day sing to me, It felt like finding a secret chapter to a book I thought I knew by heart. My wife passed away last spring, Mr. Harrison said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Playing her song, it makes it feel like she's not quite so far away. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of a sadness I recognized. It was the same sadness I saw in my dad's eyes, the same sadness I felt in my own heart. It seems, he said softly, that we were both missing someone today. I didn't know what to say. The world suddenly felt a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller all at once. It was strange to think that Mr. Harrison, the grumpy man my dad had warned me about, was feeling the same cavernous sadness that I was. He wasn't just an old man who wanted to be left alone. He was a person who missed his wife with a hurt so deep it made him quiet and still. Just like me. Just like Dad. We sat in a comfortable silence for a few minutes. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating quiet from my house, the kind that presses down on you. This quiet was different. It was peaceful, filled with the gentle buzzing of bees dancing in his colorful flowers and the soft rustle of leaves in the giant oak tree above. It was a silence that felt shared. She liked yellow, I said suddenly, the words barely a whisper. Mr. Ein. Harrison turned his head to look at me, a questioning arch in his white eyebrows. Who did? My mom. We painted my swing set yellow, I explained, remembering the feel of the brush in my hand. She said it was the color of sunshine, and we had to have it in our yard to chase away the gray days. A genuine smile bloomed on his face, slow and gentle. It transformed him, erasing the stern lines and making his eyes crinkle at the corners. Well, what do you know? He chuckled, a soft, breathy sound. Eleanor loved yellow, too. Her kitchen curtains were this shockingly bright yellow, with little white daisies embroidered on them. I told her they were too loud, but she'd just pat my hand and say, Arthur, it's like having a little piece of the sun inside, even on a rainy day. She was right, of course. I smiled back, a real, full smile this time. It felt like a secret handshake, the color yellow, a song about learning to be brave, a sadness that felt too big to carry by yourself. Would you... He started, then paused, clearing his throat as if the words were shy. Would you like to hear it again? The song? I nodded so fast my hair bounced on my shoulders. My heart felt a little lighter, like a balloon that had been untied. Yes, please. He reached for the dark wood guitar, his movements careful and deliberate, and settled it back on his knee. He looked at me, a silent question in his pale blue eyes before speaking. Do you know the words? I hesitated for a second. My mom made up her own. They were kind of silly. One part went, little bird, way up high. Don't be scared, it's time to fly. His smile widened, filled with a gentle warmth. That's a good line. Eleanor's were different. She'd sing about a little boat on a silver sea, sailing home to me. But the melody, he said, tapping the body of the guitar, the melody is what holds the memories, isn't it? He began to play. This time the music didn't just sound sad. It was a story told in notes, a conversation without words. I could almost see it all. A little bird on a branch, trembling but wanting to fly, and a little boat, guided by starlight, searching for its harbor. Two different stories, woven together by the same beautiful, simple tune. It was a song of love and of loss, but listening to it now, with him, it also felt like a song of hope. I closed my eyes and started to hum along, my voice a little stronger this time. It wasn't my mom's voice, and it wasn't his guitar, but it was ours. A new sound, created in a quiet garden, made up of missing and remembering, and the surprising discovery of a friend. When the last note hung in the air and finally faded away, a single tear rolled down my cheek. But it was a different kind of tear. It wasn't hot and painful like the ones from before. This one was warm, and it didn't hurt at all. It felt like rain on a sunny day. Thank you, I whispered, the words full of everything I couldn't say. You're welcome, Mia, he said, and my name sounded like it belonged here, in his quiet garden. Just then, a frantic voice sliced through our peaceful bubble. Mia, where are you? It was Dad. His voice was stretched thin with worry, and my stomach did a little flip-flop. I have to go, I said, jumping to my feet. Mr. Harrison nodded, his expression understanding. Go on. Don't want you getting into any trouble. I hurried to the gap in the fence, but just before I squeezed through, I turned back. Mr. Harrison? Yes, Mia? Can I come back tomorrow? To hear the song again? He looked at me, and for a moment the afternoon sun seemed to get caught in his watery eyes, making them sparkle with a light I recognized. It was the same light I used to see in my dad's eyes. I'll be right here, he said, his voice soft and sure. Same time, same song. I gave him one last grateful smile and slipped back into my own yard. When I walked inside the house, the quiet was still there, but it didn't feel so heavy anymore. It felt like maybe, just maybe, Mr. Harrison's kitchen wasn't the only place that had a little piece of the sun inside. I slipped through the gap in the fence and gently pushed the loose board back into place. The world on my side of the fence felt different now. The yellow of the swing set didn't look faded anymore. It just looked soft, like the color of the sun in the early morning. I walked into the house through the back door, my feet quiet on the kitchen tile. Mia, there you are! Dad was standing in the living room doorway, his arms crossed. The worried lines on his forehead were deep. I was calling you. Where have you been? I was about to search the whole neighborhood. I was just in the backyard, I said, which wasn't a complete lie. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. Dad was good at knowing when I wasn't telling the whole truth. Just the backyard? You were gone for a while. I thought maybe... He trailed off. I knew what he thought. That I'd wandered off somewhere. That something had happened. Since Mom was gone, he worried about everything. I'm sorry I made you worry, I said, looking down at my toes. I went next door. His eyebrows shot up. Next door? To Mr. Harrison's house? Mia, I told you he likes his privacy. You can't just go wandering into other people's yards. I didn't wander, I said, my voice rising a little. I heard something. Heard what? He asked, his voice still firm, but with a flicker of curiosity in it. I took a deep breath. I heard Mom's song, the one about the little bird. My dad froze. All the frustration on his face melted away, replaced by the same look of stunned confusion I had felt in the garden. What are you talking about, sweetie? That was your mom's song. I know, I insisted. But he was playing it, Mr. Harrison, on his guitar. That's why I went over. I had to see. Tears started to well up in my eyes again, but this time I wasn't just sad. I was desperate for him to understand. He wasn't grumpy, Dad. He was just sad, like us. I told him everything, about the guitar, the beautiful garden, and the woman named Eleanor. I told him how she had been my mom's friend, and how she had made up the song first, for a boat on the sea. I told him how Mr. Harrison played it because he missed her, just like I missed Mom. As I spoke, my dad sank down onto the couch, his face pale. He listened without interrupting, his gaze fixed on a spot on the floor. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. He just reached out his hand for mine. I went to him, and he pulled me into a hug, burying his face in my hair. His shoulders shook just a little, the same way mine had in the backyard. Her name was Eleanor, he finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Your mom mentioned her a few times. The lady with the prize-winning roses and the crazy yellow curtains. I never met her. He squeezed me tighter. I didn't know about the song. The next day after lunch, Dad looked at me. Should we go thank our neighbor for the music? He asked. A huge smile spread across my face. I nodded enthusiastically. This time, we didn't use the secret gap in the fence. We walked out our front door, down the sidewalk, and up the little stone path to Mr. Harrison's front door. Dad held my hand the whole way. He was carrying the apple pie he had bought from the store. He said it was a neighborly thing to do. Mr. Harrison answered the door, looking surprised to see us both standing there. I'm Tom, my dad said, holding out the pie. Mia's father. She told me what you did for her yesterday. I wanted to thank you. Mr. Harrison, Arthur as he told us to call him, looked from my dad to me and a small, kind smile graced his lips. She has a good ear for music, he said. Please come in. His house smelled like old books and lemon polish. He led us through to the back patio, the same place I had been the day before. He served us lemonade in tall glasses, and we ate the pie while the sun warmed our faces. Dad and Arthur talked. They talked about gardens and the weather, and about living in houses that had suddenly become too quiet. Arthur told Dad that my mom used to help Eleanor with her crossword puzzles, and that they would laugh for hours. And then, he picked up his guitar. I believe I owe this young lady a song, he said with a wink at me. He started to play, and the familiar melody filled the garden. Dad sat back in his chair, his eyes closed, a sad but peaceful smile on his face. I didn't hum along this time. I just listened, feeling the notes drift through the air, weaving us all together, me, Dad, Arthur, and the memories of the two women we loved, the ones who had given us the song. Over the next few weeks, the fence between our yards began to feel less like a wall and more like a doorway. I would go over to Arthur's garden almost every afternoon, Sometimes he taught me the names of his flowers. Sometimes we just sat in silence while he played. One day, Dad came over too, and he brought his own dusty guitar case with him. He and Arthur played together, their two guitars finding a harmony, one a little rusty, the other slow and careful. The sound was beautiful. It drifted over the fence into our yard, where the yellow swing set sat waiting. The quiet in our house didn't disappear completely, but now it was different. It was softer, filled with the echo of music and the promise of a friend next door. I knew I would always miss my mom. The ache in my heart was still there, but it wasn't a crushing weight anymore. It was more like a part of me, a reminder of a love so big it could never truly be gone. It lived on in a simple, gentle song, a melody that had crossed a fence and healed 3 broken hearts. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a message of hope.